Thank you. The gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Walsh, it's great to see you. The last time you appeared before the committee, I was very grateful to hear you express your strong support for my domestic workers' Bill of Rights, which would extend essential protections to nannies, house cleaners, and home healthcare aides who have been on the front lines of so much and yet left out of our civil rights protections, as you know. Domestic work has changed dramatically in recent years, and it's really growing at a rapid rate. Secretary Walsh, when was the last significant update to federal labor law as it applies to domestic work?
I believe it was roughly 50 years ago. Something that's as comprehensive as the proposal you have filed in Congress. We have not looked at this, and there's a lot of different other areas that we have not looked at in 30, 40, 50 years when it comes to labor law.
Thank you. And, when we think about it, there's an estimated 2.2 million domestic workers employed in private homes to provide care for children, elders, and disabled individuals and house cleaning services. And these workers, who often work alone, can be subjected to sexual harassment and workplace health and safety hazards without any recourse. And some still don't earn overtime pay. For example, Etelbina Hauser is a Seattle house cleaner. She's had 3 separate male employers expose themselves or proposition her. And unfortunately, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which protects against sexual harassment in the workplace, only covers employers with 15 or more employees, leaving Ms. Hauser with little legal recourse. Secretary Walsh, can you explain how a National Domestic Workers Bill of Rights, such as what I've proposed, would extend anti-discrimination and other workplace protections under federal law to benefit these domestic workers?
I mean, I haven't read the whole bill, your whole bill, but I know that when I was in the legislature in Massachusetts, we had a similar piece of legislation that went out there, provided lots of protections for workers' rights, for immigrant workers that are in this country. It extends benefits on some of the sexual harassment that you just talked about. Also, some of making sure that workers are being paid fairly, their wages aren't being stolen. And I think that, certainly when you think about 50 years from the last time we did it, this bill is long overdue. And hopefully that, I guess I can't advocate for legislation, but I certainly support this legislation. I know the president and the vice president supports it as well. And I know that there's labor organizations, and quite honestly, I know there's some employers in the country that support this legislation as well.
That's right. Exactly right. Secretary Walsh, this year I submitted an appropriations request for DOL to fund the establishment of a hotline for domestic workers to anonymously report harassment, abuse, and other workforce hazards and exploitation and get connected to relevant resources. Do you think it's important, and why do you think it's important for such a hotline to exist for domestic workers?
I think a lot of times workers are afraid to come forward. They're afraid to report atrocities that they're facing on the job site. And I think having that ability to be able to call in so that we can properly go out and inspect to make sure that workers are being treated fairly is fine. We get many, many calls in the Department of Labor on a daily basis, and a monthly basis, and a yearly basis, whether it's in wage and hour, OSHA violations. People are afraid to report. They're afraid to lose their job. And quite honestly, people should not be afraid to report something, whether it's a domestic violence action on a job site, whether it's a safety violation on a job site, and we need to make sure we create a safe space for people to be able to report whatever they want to report.
Well, your support is going to be really crucial as we move through the appropriations process, so thank you for that. The home care workforce was truly on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic and provided this critical care that enabled people with disabilities and seniors who were the most vulnerable to the virus to avoid congregate settings that often saw high rates of COVID-19 infection. But home health workers are paid only $13.81 an hour on average. That's roughly half of what the average U.S. worker is paid. And benefits, as you know, are often very poor or non-existent. What role, if any, does the department have in expanding this often low-paid workforce and improving the recruitment, retention, and advancement of such a critical workforce?
I mean, I think one of the roles we have, or I have as secretary, is advocacy. I think that, this can be addressed in our own contracts through our budget process. I think we have to work with the states. I think we have to work with the nonprofit providers. I think we have to work with the organizations, the unions that are in this work. I think that that's one of the biggest things we can do. I mean, this is also a crisis, not just underpaying workers in these industries, but that means cutting back on the appropriate care that our loved ones are getting in these facilities. So I think it needs to be kind of a all of society approach, if you will.
Secretary Walsh, I really appreciate all your work and service to our country and to the workers of our country. And Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield back.